Here in Studio One, I'm working on this drum part. Let's just have a quick listen to a few bars to get a rough idea of what we're working with. So a fairly typical slow rock beat. Now if we look at the top in the track view, we can see the various events here, and you'll notice that they've got kind of labels at the top. This one, for example, is called drums verse, and further on we've got drums verse fill, chorus in, and chorus over here. But these are actually much more than labels, because if we go down to the bottom left here and click, you can see I can swap this part out, this chorus part, for a verse, for example. And that's because I'm using something called patterns in Studio One. And if I double click on this event here to open up the edit view, you can see at the bottom here, this is quite different looking to the usual piano roll or even drum view that you're used to seeing, because this is the pattern view. So how did I do all of this? Let's find out. Hi folks, I'm Mike and I hope you're well. First of all, let me apologize for not showing my face on this video. As you can probably hear, I'm recovering from flu and a chest infection, and you probably don't need to see the way I look right now. And I'll also apologize because my voice may break up here and there. I'll do my very best. I think you're going to be able to understand me just fine though. So how do we start with patterns? Well, what if we've already got an existing part? For example, I've already got this impact part here, and I've created this drum part using the regular drum view that we've got here. Well, if you've got a situation like that, you can actually just right click on the event here, then go down to instrument parts, and then just click on convert to pattern. And when you do that, you can see that now the pattern editor is there. But what if you don't have an existing part? Well, let's go ahead and actually remove that part there. And I'm going to start off by dragging impact in because it's something we've all got. So I'll just drop that into the project there. I'm just going to choose, it doesn't really matter which preset I choose there. So I've chosen a preset. You can see at the moment it's just, you know, the regular view there. But what you can actually do if you don't have anything existing there is press Control Shift, or that would be Command Shift, and P for pattern on the keyboard, and that will just insert a bar there, a blank event there, and it will be with the pattern editor there. Okay, so that's a couple of ways that you can create patterns. Now I'm actually going to use a third-party plugin for this demonstration as well. The reason for that is I want to show you what happens if you create a pattern and you don't have all these nice sort of names here that you can click on, you know, and make sounds with, like we have in the view here for impact, okay, which I think, if my memory serves me correctly, will appear by default with a default installation of Studio One. Let me know in the comments if I'm not correct on that. But here's what you would do. So I'm just going to remove that, and I'm going to go down and actually grab Addictive Drums 2, as I often do, and drag that into the project there. And again, once that's loaded up, I'll just give it a second or two. Yeah, there it is. We don't actually need to see it, so I'll shut it. Again, I'll press Control Shift and P, or Command Shift and P on Mac. That creates the pattern view. Now you can see here that we do have, you know, a similar view, but we don't have the drum names or anything like that. And that's because I don't have the drum maps loaded up for this. Now you can create your own drum maps in Studio One quite easily. That would be a different tutorial. But I recommend that if you don't have the drum map installed, go across to the cloud option here, because most of them are already available. Okay, so go to cloud. You may have to sign in to the exchange here, so just sign in like so. Then I'm just going to go to the search box at the top and type in Addictive Drums. Okay, it filters through. I like this one down here. There's a few Addictive Drums maps that people have made. I like this one with the colored options. Okay, so just click on that, go to the bottom, click on install. It just takes a moment or two to install, not very long at all. I'll close this transfers window, and then when I go across to my pattern, I can now select Addictive Drums here, and you can see that I've got this rather nice view now with all the drum names and some nice colorings and things as well. So that's how you would set up your first pattern. And actually, on purpose, I'm going to continue with Addictive Drums rather than Impact, because I feel that a lot of people think that patterns are just for kind of electronic music and things like that, and I don't think that that's necessarily true. We'll explore why I think that a little bit later, but I'm going to try and set a precedent here and say, hey, you can use this for any style of music. So before we create our first pattern, I just want to recommend that you go down to the loop section here in your transport bar, right click on that, and make sure you have loop follows selection selected there, or of course you can use the shortcut key there. And then I would switch loop on, and it's just going to make sure that the playhead keeps looping around our currently created pattern if we've got it selected up here. Okay, so the first most obvious way that we can start adding beats or notes to this pattern is simply by clicking on one of these little squares here. So if I want to kick on the first beat, I'll just click like so. If I want to get rid of it, I'll just click on it again and it's gone. I think the cursor kind of speaks for itself there quite nicely. So let's pop in some kicks here. We'll do one on the first, one on the third, maybe one halfway through the second there, yeah. Have a quick listen to that. I'll press space on the keyboard. Cool, I think we need a snare. Let's do something quite obvious, I think, here. I'll pop in a regular snare hit on the second and on the fourth here, yeah, have a listen. Nothing magical here. Now, another way that we can insert a series of notes if they're one after the other, I'm going to do this with the hi-hat, is just to drag out across the squares on the hi-hat here, yeah, like so, and then that will create a whole bunch in a row, okay? And if you want to delete them, you can get rid of them like so, like that. Another quick way I want to show you here is to use some of the presets at the top here. You've got 4 main ones, so the first one here will just insert some on each beat there, on the first part of each beat. I'll undo that. Got another one here for half beats, yeah, and as you can imagine, this is on every single beat as we did just a moment ago, and then we can clear with this one. I'll just pop in this one and show you this final selection here, which enables us just to shift beats. So I'll do that, and you can see the beats are shifting one step if we do that. Okay, so I'll leave them like so. Have a quick listen. And that's probably, for me, the main way that I would actually enter notes. But there is another main way I want to talk about, and that is to work in step time, okay? So to do that, we just hit this kind of record button up here. Just make sure that that's selected. You can see that the playhead now is sort of highlighted to this very first step. And if I press any note on my piano keyboard, it's going to insert that note. I'll just do, say, the ride symbol, and then when I release, it moves to the next step here. If I want to skip a step, I can just click here and then do another ride, like so. Now, what I find useful about this approach in terms of using the keyboard to insert notes is you can immediately control the velocity, yeah, how hard that note is being played. If we just manually insert, we have to go ahead and adjust the velocity later, which I'll show you later and can be done, but it's kind of handy to be able to do it right away, in my opinion. So I've got this basic 16-step beat, which sounds like this. And 16 steps is the default value for patterns, but we can change that just up here. We can select different values. So if I were to select, say, 12, for example, it's just going to have 12 steps. It's kind of cut off those last 4 steps I made there. But if I change it back to 16, they are still there, okay? But another important thing to remember when you've sort of already set something up like this in 16 steps, When you change to 12, it's going to loop around these three. And this kind of implies 3 beats to the bar, or sort of a 3/4 rhythm, okay? But at the top, if you look at the event here, it's still over sort of 4 beats. So we're going to get some weird looping happening. Have a listen. So I'd recommend if you do this, you might want to actually adjust the length of your event up here, okay, like so. Likewise, you may want to go to twice the length. So perhaps rather than your parts being, or your patterns, I should say, being just 1 bar long, you may want to make them 2 bars long. So you may go for, say, 32 steps, like so. And then I would drag this out to 2 bars at the top here, the event that is. I'll click on it again just to make sure that loop is following, okay. And now we've got the ability to, perhaps do a little variation in the second part if we want to. I'm just going to quickly put in some basic beats here, okay, very, very quickly, and have a quick listen. So I'd probably want to adjust some velocities there, but you get the general idea. Now, the other thing that we can adjust, which is a big effector here, is resolution. Now, this is a kind of a weird one because this does affect what you've got existing there already. We start off with a 1/16 resolution, and as we saw, we have 1/16 in terms of steps normally. If we change this now to a 1/32 resolution, in theory this means we have more steps to play with, but you'll hear what actually happens is it just kind of goes to double time. Have a listen. So just be aware of how that works, and you may want to start off by getting that to the kind of settings that you actually want. I'm going to pop it back to 1/16 because you may be looking to change the resolution because you do need a bit more sort of fine tuning, if you like, with some of these instruments. Well, probably one way you may prefer to do this is, say for example, I need just more resolution on this ride here. I can right click on that and then just go to double lane resolution. You can see I've got a lot more squares that I can insert notes in here, yeah? But when I play it, it hasn't doubled the time. It's kind of an awful or really good beat, I'm not quite sure. So you see how useful that could actually be as well. So there's a couple of different ways that we can make notes louder or quieter. The first is to add accents. If I hold down my control key or command on Mac and hover over one of these existing notes, I can click on it and that accents that particular note. Click on it again and it removes the accent. So I'll accent it now and I'll just play this. You're going to hear that ride is a little louder than it was before. And how much louder it is controlled with this accent control up here, okay, which you can just either click in there and type in there, or you can actually just drag up and down like so to increase or decrease that, okay. The other thing that you can do is control this volume according to velocity. So I'll just remove the accent for a moment, and then I'm going to go right to the bottom left here and click on this tiny little icon. That reveals some different options here, and on the first tab we have velocity, and once we've selected a particular drum, we can simply go in and just drag that velocity up and down. Now keep in mind, if you've set a velocity and you also accent that note, the two are combining together. There's a compound effect there, okay, so that's just worth noting. While we've got these options open down at the bottom here, let's have a look at some other cool features which give us some fine control over each note. First of all, let's look at the repeat feature here. If I click on that, I've got my snare selected at the top at the moment, and for this snare here, I'm just going to add an extra repeat just by dragging this bar up so that it says 1 for 1 repeat, and we'll have a quick listen. And you can hear almost a kind of a flam kind of effect there, okay, so you can add as many repeats as you want there. Let's have a listen. Now That's fine, you may be able to make use of that, but a better way for me to actually do a flam, and I'll demonstrate that now with this delay feature, is to actually add another snare in here. So I'm just going to do some snare hits on exactly the same beat. We'll have a listen to that. No flams so far, but what we can do now is actually offset some of these beats slightly. I'm just going to sort of eyeball it here. Let's do, say, 12% should be about right, I reckon. We'll do it on both of those snares that I've got selected there. Have a listen. Yeah, we get a nice kind of flam effect there. I could exaggerate that a bit more. So I rather like that feature. The other thing that we can do is add a little bit of randomness with this probability feature. So I'll click on here and I'm just going to insert another ride symbol or two here. Let's just do two towards the end. And I'll just make it so that they're often played but not always. Okay, I'll just drag these probability bars down. Have a listen. So that's a neat way of kind of trying to add the illusion that a real drummer is playing and kind of randomly doing something sometimes and other times not. So there's a couple of controls which you may have played with and they didn't make any difference. Those are swing and gate. So let's look at how we actually use them to make a difference. So starting off with swing, if we play our current beat, swing is on 0%. If we actually push it all the way up to 100%, play the beat again, we hear no swing, we hear no difference in the beat. And that's because none of these notes are actually making use of swing. Let me explain. So I'll put it all the way back down to 0 again. And what I'm going to do is add a whole bunch of notes in for this hi-hat here. So I'll just drag out across all of the steps so that we've got a note on each step. Have a quick listen. And now I'll increase swing all the way up to 100%. Have a listen now. So you can hear that difference. You can hear that swing now. So what swing actually does is it takes every second step. So say here's step 2, then step 4, step 6, step 8. And it takes those steps and moves them over to the right, okay? So that they're much closer to the step, which is to their right. So the reason we couldn't hear the effect of swing before is because we just didn't have enough notes or beats in there for it to actually be able to do that and for us to be able to hear it. Okay, so that is swing. I'll just get rid of all of those notes. Now the other thing that you may have played with is gate. So gate is to do with note length. It's on 100% at the moment. If I put it all the way down to 0, let's do that. Have a listen to the beat. And it's not making any difference again. And the reason for that is because with Addictive Drums here, I can't actually change the length of beats with this particular instrument, okay? Let me demonstrate an instrument where we can change beats, and it gives us an opportunity to look at patterns with melodic instruments. So I've actually got a piano part over here, okay, and I've used patterns, but it looks a little different as you can see here, okay. We can see a kind of a piano roll down here, and you can see a few notes in here. Let's have a quick listen. Okay. So that's the sort of natural length of the notes. But if we go up to gate up here, and I'll just put that down, you know, pretty short there. Have a listen now. You can hear those notes are much shorter. I can push it up to like 200%. And those notes have gotten longer, okay? Now this also gives us an opportunity to talk about note length. If we go over to a note like this and hold shift on the keyboard, we can actually drag the length of notes out manually as well. Okay, so now we've made our first simple pattern. The cool thing is, at the top in the track view, we can just drag this out to as long as we need it for, okay? So this is a really neat way of just sort of setting up the basis for your song. But of course, you are going to want some variations along the way. Let's see how we do that. If we go down the bottom to the editor, click on the little I button here, you can see some different options are available here. So the first pattern that we created there is by default is called Variation 1. Let's just go in and rename that, say verse, like so. Okay. And as you can probably predict, I want to make, say, a chorus section. So one thing that we can do is just duplicate this pattern. So I'll just click on the duplicate variation here. Okay. And that sets us up with our existing pattern that we already had. Let's rename this to chorus. Yep. And then I can just add in something, I don't know, what shall I put in? Just a symbol at the beginning, a nice crash there at the beginning. All right, and that gives us our variation. Now, because we're currently working on this particular pattern, chorus, the track view at the top here has changed to chorus. So what I'd recommend I do in this situation, if I basically want it to be a verse here, so I'll just click back on verse here, you can see it's changed to verse. And then at the point where I want it to change to the chorus, I'll just grab my split tool up here and then just split it, say there, yeah. And then I can go to this bottom sort of control here in the tracks view, just click on that and I can select this section to be a chorus, okay. And I can continue to, you know, drag that out, extend it, do whatever I want to it. So that's the basis of the variations that we can create. If you want a completely blank one, then you would just click on this plus button here. If you want to get rid of this one, you'll click on the minus button here to delete it. Pretty straightforward in that way. So if you particularly like the patterns you've made and you think perhaps you may use them in the future, then you can actually click on Store here, give it a name, a description, put it in a subfolder if you wish. I won't do that now. And then of course you can load them later. So just click on the load button here, select the stored patterns that you created. I'll click on this one here and you can see that they all appear with their variations down here as well. I think that is about as much as you need to know for patterns. I hope you found this helpful. Thank you for enduring my croaky voice. I hope it will be better next week, and thank you so much for watching.